Well, hello and welcome to this latest video. In this video we're going to look at Emmet for HTML. If you remember, we installed Emmet quite early on as we knew we'd need it. I'll put a link at the top for you. If you haven't already installed Emmet, you can do it for both Atom and for NetBeans, and it's also available for a lot of other programs as well. This could be quite a long video, even though it's just for HTML. So let's get started. What is Emmet? Well, Emmet is basically a code completion or code snippet system for HTML and CSS on steroids, and I do mean on steroids. I've created a blank index HTML. We've created a folder called HTML9. And in it I've actually got two files, one which is totally empty and one which has my notes in it. And I'll bring my notes over so that I can remember some of the items that we're going to do. Now, we're not going to cover all of Emmet. We're not going to cover all of Emmet for HTML. We just don't have the time. It would take a number of hours to do that. Okay, let's have a look at the Emmet website, because there's some very useful information on the Emmet website. The website is emmet.io. Okay, you now need to go to, well, if you haven't downloaded it, you can go to download. Just make that full screen. And you can see it's actually available for a number of editors and IDEs. It's also available for third-party support, so things like Vim, it supports Visual Studio Code, has it already in, that type of thing. You'll see that it's actually available for Notepad++. There is a problem with this in that Notepad++ is no longer shipping the plugins manager, so you'd have to download the plugins manager for Notepad++ first, and then download Emmet for that. It's available for lots of things. Let's have a look at where you can get some documentation. Now, there's a lot of documentation, there's a lot of information here, but what will be most interesting to you is if you come down towards the bottom, you'll see it says cheat sheet. And the cheat sheet will give you, quite literally, a cheat sheet for Emmet. You can download it. It's actually taking a moment to come in on this one. But you can download it and you can print it out so that it's available for you. And as you can see, there are a lot of commands. This is just HTML. Now we go into the CSS, which we'll do at some other time. And then there's a section for XML right down towards the bottom. XSL at the bottom. Okay, so there's a lot to do, but I recommend that you actually download the cheat sheet or have the cheat sheet available as you're going to need it. Okay, let's get started. The first Emmet command is the exclamation mark, sometimes called the bang in American English. If you just put in the bang and then press the tab key on your keyboard, what you'll actually get is a skeleton HTML document. Excuse me, I'm suffering from a cold. So, as you can see, a complete skeleton HTML document just by typing the exclamation mark and pressing tab. Okay, so what can Emmet do? Well, it can do all of these betas. It can do the titles, this type of thing. So it can do style sheets. It can do is basically all the commands that you find in HTML5, HTML4, and earlier HTMLs. It can actually has a shortcut and a system for that. Right, okay, I'm going to copy and paste this because there's quite a lot and I do need some notes, so I'm going to use this as my notes. Now, the first of the Emmet tags, and the one you'll probably use a lot is the div tag. So you just type in div and press tab, and there you have it. It's produced an opening and closing element, div element for you. You can do this for others. So for example, section, you can do the same thing, and all of that type of thing. So article, oops, it does help if I press the right button. Right, now you can also add in a class in Emmet, and to do that you put a dot. Now notice there's no spaces. You must not put a space in any of the Emmet code, because a space is the stop character for Emmet. So if you put in, for example, oops, my class, and press enter, you'll get a div with a class of my div. I know we haven't covered classes yet, but it's there with the cursor ready to actually type in the div. You can do multiple classes, and that's very easy. You just do and so you can nest your classes within the div. You can also do IDs, so, and this is with the hash character, and that will give you an ID as well. Again, we haven't really covered IDs, but they are very useful for both JavaScript and CSS as well. Right, okay, you can actually mix and match classes and IDs. So we've put in div point my class hash my ID, press tab, and you get the div there. There is a shortcut for a div. If you just put in the my class, it will assume you want a div. You can do it for the ID as well, and one of the interesting things, you can also do it for some of the other characters, some of the other elements. I can't type and talk, I'm afraid. It's a problem I've got. So you can do it for other elements as well. Next, you can actually do the element like this as well, if you wish. Now, what that will do is create a span within your section. So you've got your EM and your EM, and then inside it's created a span. We haven't done spans, but they're very good, useful items for being able to highlight something within a paragraph or something like that. Okay, next, child items. The child item is the greater than sign. So if we want an unordered list, we can just do that, and we get our unordered list. We can also do it within a div. So for example, here I've got my class, and as you can see, it's nested inside the div, the unordered list, and the various items. So that's the way you nest. Now, what about siblings? Now, siblings are a very useful one. This is where you can have multiple lines on the page. So here we use siblings uses the plus sign. So div plus header plus p for paragraph, bq for block quote plus footer, and you'll see that we're going to get a number of different items on here. So here we have our div, here we have our header, here we have our paragraph, our block quote, and our footer. Now you could, of course, have child and siblings, which is actually very useful at times. So here the div is using the child greater than, and then inside the div we've got a header, a paragraph, a block quote, and a footer, as you can see here. Very easy way of doing it, and very quickly. Grouping is done with the brackets, and I'll just copy and paste this because my typing is very slow, as you've noticed. So here we have a div which is going to nest a number of headers and a footer and that type of thing within there. So let's have a look at what this does. So here you've got a header with 3 different list items, which could be a navigation, for example. Then you've got the footer with a paragraph tag inside it, all nested inside the div tag. And that's a very useful one. In fact, if we'd actually put a p tag here, that would have been quite useful as well. Oops, need a plus sign. Now, you must always have the cursor at the end. If you don't have the cursor at the end, you're going to have something quite strange happen. I'll just show you. You'll see that the P has not been included. So the cursor must always be at the end of the line, at the end of the tag, and then you'll get the correct layout. So header, navigation, paragraph, footer, with a paragraph in that, and all done with one small line of text. It really does help. You can do multiplication with Emmet. Here we will create an unordered list with 5 list items in it. So that's UL, the greater than sign, the list LI times 5 to say that we want 5, and if I press tab you can see we have our 5 list items. You can also, of course, put in a class. So here we have 5 items with the same class, and if I highlight here, you'll see that we can actually take numbering and we can add a class, we can add attributes, we can add text, we can add paragraphs, and we can add content within that. That should be a plus sign, but that might not actually do exactly what I want. Just hold a moment, let's have a look. Yes, so we've got it nested inside like that, and it is a bit of a problem because it's not actually nesting as I wanted it to. But you can see we've got our 3 headings, we've got some text in there, we've got a title, we've got a class, and then we've got paragraph below. Yes, that's not exactly what I wanted, but okay, item numbering. We can actually have item numbering, so all the items are numbered. Very useful when you've got a list. So you've got item 1, item 2, item 3, item 4, item 5. And you can actually go further than that. You can have items with numbers here, so class 1, class 2, class 3, that type of thing in there. Okay, for text, now this one's quite an interesting one. This allows you to actually create a sentence without writing the full elements out. So here we're in a paragraph, and then we've got the text click with a space. Then we're putting an anchor tag which has the text here in it, and then outside of the anchor tag we've got more text to continue. And as you can see, click here to continue, and that's what will actually show on the screen. You can do forms. Now there are different types of forms. We haven't covered forms yet, but you can do the get form. So that gives the method of get. You can do the post form, which does the post method, and those are very useful ways of doing forms. Inputs are what you would actually usually have within a form. So you can actually use input, and that will give you your input type of text. If you just put INP, this will actually give you more attributes in the element. So you get your type of text and a name and an ID to enter in. So it's quite useful to use the INP one. Email. Oops, I'm getting ahead of myself. Input, and then follow that with a colon and an email. So here you've got the type of email, and again name and ID. You can create buttons. There are two ways. You can use button and tab, or you can actually use, which is easier, BTN and tab, and you get exactly the same thing. You have shortcuts for some of the buttons, and so for the submit button it's S, for the reset button it's R, and by pressing that you'll see we get a button type submit, and I've actually added text in here, so it's type submit with the text of submit, and then a button type reset with the text reset. I could have actually added some space in here as well, just to make that look better. So we could have gone and done a space like that. And oops, that's better. And then we would have had a space between the two items there. There is another shortcut for quite a few of the elements, and this is just the plus sign. And these are elements that are nested within elements. So if you remember, we recently did the map element for image maps. So if we do map plus, you'll see it comes up with the map name, and then we have the area, the coordinates, and the href. Select is another one we haven't done, but this is for drop-down option boxes, and if we do that, it brings us up with the default set, and we can then just copy and paste, or we can actually create the options as well if we wanted to. So just as easily as that. And finally, let's have a look at creating text or dummy text. One of the things that you can do with Emmet is you can create some what's called Pig Latin dummy text. If you just type in lorem and press tab, you'll get about 20 words, I believe it is, or 25 words of text, but you can actually put in as many as you wish. So if we type in lorem times 5, you'll see we actually get 5 divs with 20 text. You can also do lorem 15 without the multiplication sign, and this will give you just 15 words of lorem. So you've got a number of different choices of lorem, lorem ipsum, Pig Latin, for you to try out. So Emmet is really, really useful. You really do need to look at the cheat sheet because there's so much in it. I use it quite a lot in both Atom and NetBeans, but in NetBeans I also use the NetBeans code completion as well, which is very useful because although Emmet is good for HTML and CSS, it's not very good for, well, it doesn't actually work at all for other languages. So PHP, etc., and Java, etc., it doesn't work. So I use the code completion in NetBeans for that. Go on to Emmet.io and have a look at the cheat sheet. It's very, very important. I hope you found this video useful. Please like and subscribe. My name's John. Thank you for watching.